recording before I forget. I do have just a couple of slides here just to kind of introduce the concept, even though you probably have an idea at a high level about the course, but then we'll go into the course both from teacher and student view, because in this particular course, that is a significant difference because of how the course functions and the release rules that are part of the course. After we look at the functionality, we'll also take kind of a deep dive into the 3 special reports that are also available with this course that aren't in any of the other courses. So that's what we'll look at today.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
And so
if
we look at this extended learning algebra, it really is looking at the beginning performance level. It's what makes this course so very different, is that there is actually this readiness assessment. We all know that it's really hard for students to succeed at algebra if they don't have at least some basic mathematic and pre-algebra skills. Now, even if students have been predetermined to go into this course, regardless of their performance on this readiness assessment, it's probably at least good for the teachers to see whether the students are close to achieving at this readiness assessment, or if they're really not very close, so you know it's likely going to need some additional support and probably even, honestly, additional time built in to go through the course along that line. But it's one of the things that makes this course different than just the straight Algebra 1, where the kids start first unit and they move on. There really is that concept of a pre-assessment within the course. After the pre-assessment, you're then going to also look at components in each of the units that actually are designed to provide individual support and practice for students. So depending upon how students do on basically what we call checkups in each unit, students will actually get some pre-taught items that will review for them pre-algebra skills along the way. And then similarly, after they're exposed to the true algebra content, after they're done and based on their section quizzes, they'll get review material that is identified just for them based on mastery or not mastering certain assessments. So once again, you have more of that individualized support and practice that hopefully the remediation is occurring within the class instead of saying, oops, we know you didn't do well in the first unit and all the skills afterwards are based on that unit, so you keep struggling. So the goal is to kind of remediate and reinforce within the course. And that's really what we're looking at here. So that's the concept here. To do that, we deal with the readiness assessment. Each unit has that checkup that I just described. Depending upon mastery on the checkup items, students may or may not see getting started folders. If they see a getting started folder, there are going to be extra study guides and practice questions. There are not going to be extra graded assignment, but there is going to be extra content and practice added in before the actual content of the unit is attempted. Then you have the section reviews along the way. Yes, go right ahead.
So if they see getting started, that means that it was determined that they probably needed more practice before they actually get started.
Correct. It probably means that there were some pre-algebra skills that they did not do very well on the checkup. So they didn't reach that mastery. And even within the getting started, depending upon the unit, there could actually be multiple folders within the getting started. So you may sometimes only have one concept, but a lot of times there would be 2 or 3 different possibilities. So one student may only have one unit or getting started item released, where another student might have 2. And you'll actually, as the instructor, be able to see the possibilities of what could get released. And the student, though, will only see the items that they did not master based on the checkup. And then in a similar way, the section reviews are based on the same type of release as the getting started, only instead of being based on a checkup and pre-algebra skills, it's based on how they did on the section quiz. So that they'll review items that they struggled with before we move on to additional algebra throughout the rest of the course. And then the other thing that makes this course special are going to be our Peak Pathways reports, which are going to give the teachers some extra data really to be able to look at, and especially in a blended situation, be able to take that data and really maybe possibly make a decision over maybe what they want to do as maybe a group lesson or a small group lesson, or maybe pull an individual aside. So that'll be, the reports will be the last place we look today along that line. If you look, we have the readiness assessment, and it actually looks just like a unit. So it almost looks just like basically right there, that readiness assessment, it basically looks just like their semester exam, only it's the first thing they see. The difference is if they were to click on any of these other units that we see here, none of those other units will actually populate with any information. So numbers and expressions will not populate unless that readiness assessment is actually taken and completed. Now there's a way around that I will show you, and there's also a way to have students gain access to these units if they don't meet that 80%. Right now the release rule is set that if students earn an 80% on the readiness assessment, they will then have content release in those units that follow. And that'll make.
Can I ask a question?
Yep, absolutely, always.
So does that mean that their section content won't be populated until they hit 80% on the pre-skills, no matter what? Or only after that first initial assessment?
What it is only after that first initial assessment. Now, there are some other releases as we go through, but as soon as they earn an 80% or the teacher provides an override grade of an 80%, they will then see this checkup. That's what gets released next. So they won't see all the content. They will be asked to take the checkup before the unit's content releases.
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly.
Yep.
So if they take the readiness assessment and they score less than 80%, no algebra content shows up for them until they get an 80% or the teacher overrides it?
The teacher actually has to override it because the student will not be allowed back in to retake that. Okay, so the readiness is, the concept of the readiness assessment is if they don't achieve this level, you really want to take a good look to see if maybe a pre-algebra course may not just be a better fit for the student right now. Now, if it's decided that this is really the course they need to be in and pre-algebra isn't an option, then the teacher's going to go in and give the override. But you probably know that they're going to get a lot of these getting started folders released, and they may need some extra supports to still be successful.
Right. Okay. And then these getting started folders are content specific to that unit, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
And from that pre-assessment, that readiness assessment, the instructor is getting, I'm assuming, objective by objective data?
Yes, they will be able, that will be one of the 3 reports that we look at in terms of you could pick the readiness assessment and see the mastery level of which objectives, yes.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Yep. So once the student takes that checkup, you then have basically that section and everything kind of releases normal. And here you can see I have a Getting Ready's integers, and within that Getting Ready's integers folder I have both a study, which is content, and then I have practice questions, which is content, or based on that content. In this example that I have here, the student actually had 2 Getting Ready folders released. They had the Getting Ready's on integers and the Getting Ready's on real numbers. A different student may have taken that same exact checkup, and maybe they only received the integer folder because they mastered in the checkup the real numbers region. You could have a third student that never sees either of these folders and will just start with the real numbers and the true algebra content that follows along that way. So those getting ready folders will only release based on how they do on those checkups, quizzes. And those checkups are basically testing kind of pre-algebra skills that are needed to succeed at the algebra content that we're working on in that lesson. After we go through, similar to our regular algebra course, there's going to be a written assignment throughout, and then they're going to get a quiz at the end. After the quiz, once again, depending upon how they did on the quiz, they'll then have review folders released along the way. So you get, after they take exponents and roots, if they didn't succeed and didn't master all those objectives, they'll get a review folder, which once again may contain a folder or two of that content that includes the study guide and the practice. So it's the same concept, just at the end of the algebra. So that's really the basis of the course. And before I review any of the data-specific reports, I'm going to actually leave here, and we're going to go out to the course itself. So we're now going to go out to the course itself, and we're going to take a look at it through two different modes. And we're going to see if my sneaking, I was trying to sneak the system here, and I'm trying to have two login. I may have to bounce back and forth between the logins just because I do want you to see both student and teacher aspects. I'm in right now viewing this as a student. And Michelle, since I know you're a little new to the whole system, this is a course that hasn't been set up in any way, but you come in the announcements course. And if I were a student just kind of poking around and I came down here to the solve equations, notice there's nothing here. There is no content visible to the student. The only way I get content is I click on this readiness assessment. If I open up this readiness assessment as the student is only given one shot at it. It's not like they're given multiple attempts. They're not being asked to take it multiple times. It is not something that will count towards their grade. It's not a graded assignment in that aspect. But I am actually going to open this up so you can kind of get a feel for what this looks like and how long it is. It's a little bit lengthy because you are kind of comparing along the lines, and we're going to talk about the length of both this and actually the semester one exam, because I want to show you two options if you think the length might preclude a student from completing either of these two longer assessments before like a period ends or the time that they have to take. But if I come down and I just kind of look through, I mean, we're talking some basic math items. Some of it will be multiple choice. As I walk through, though, you're also going to notice that, as you see here, there are some answers and questions that are actually just fill in, so they're not entirely multiple choice. There are also going to be some questions as I come through. And here, once again, you can see a variety of use questions here. There are also going to be some multiple answer, or in this case, where some words are provided, and they basically have to choose from the ones given to them at that point. And scroll down through. And I believe it's 60 questions. So here we have 60 questions along the way. So I'm not going to spend the time to do 60 questions worth, but I'm still going to click this Save and Submit button. And I'm going to take my 0 on my pre-assessment for dear Norm. Norm's not going to have done well here, but that's Norm. Norm did not do well. So if Norm tries to continue, what Norm sees is the following. If he clicks on the readiness assessment, he sees basically a link to an item that basically says just please contact your instructor for more information. And that'll show up no matter what. But notice if I click here, Norm still doesn't have anything because he received a 0. So I'm going to log out of Norm, and I'm going to log into a student that actually did take the assessment. And Marty actually sat down and took the assessment. So Marty did just a tad better than what we just did for Norm. So I log in here as Marty. I enter my course. And Marty has actually worked through this course just a little bit. She hasn't gotten all that far, but she's done a little bit. So if I come here to my numbers and expressions, you can see that she has a check up here, and she actually has several folders. Now the reason why she has several folders is because this is all part of the algebra. She came in, took the real rational numbers, she went through this content, she completed this assignment, she took the quiz. Now because she did well on this quiz, you'll notice when I come back here to numbers and expressions that there is no review folder here for her. And the reason why there's no review folder is because she actually did quite well on that. The same thing is true for each and every one of these items. Now, if I come in here to the exponents and roots folder, and we instead don't take it for real because we're having a conversation here. Notice not all the questions are always multiple choice. Sometimes we get questions like this, which are multiple answer. And let's see. I'm not going to answer really read questions, but we'll do the randomness here. And when we come in as a teacher, I will ask for a couple of you to possibly take over the mouse controls a little bit when we get to reports and things like that. But so I come down here and I click Save and Submit. And my guess is here, after I click OK, I see that I probably only had a 7 out of 29. I probably wasn't all that successful in my guessing. So now when I click OK and I come back out to the unit level, you'll notice because I didn't do well on that, before the student moves completely on to the next section of this unit, they do get that review folder. Unlike what you don't see released up top here, if I go into that review folder, you can see that I actually had 2 items that I didn't do well on. I didn't do well on exponents, and I didn't do well on the roots. So within each of those folders, this is where the student gets a study guide, and this is taking that content lesson. It will be a pop-up window. I apologize, my connection's a little slower than I normally have when I do these trainings. But here we go. Students always have the ability to move the navigation wherever they like. It always comes in on the side. I personally kind of like it up top, so I move it up top. But students are going to work their way through this lesson. Hopefully after they work their way through the lesson, the practice they can take as many times as they'd like. The practice, and Lori, I know you're used to using that peak library item. The practice are just like the practice there. So they're going to randomly get those 10 questions, but they can take it as frequently as they'd like. And they can work their way through and get a little extra review on both the exponents and the roots because they didn't do well there. So the thing to keep in mind with the concept of the review folders and the getting started folders is if you think of a student that this course is designed for, it's probably the student that's somewhat borderline and we know has struggled a little bit, or you just want to make sure all your math students have this extra support built in. If a student struggles across all components, what's one issue you might deal with within a semester's period of time?
Well, my concern is for a student who is really spotty in their skills. So, like, for example, you had said that it might indicate that they need a pre-algebra course as opposed to Algebra 1. In our situation, we are the group that we are utilizing this program with to start out with is 10th graders who've already failed algebra and trying to see if, you know, we can figure out, A, why they're failing it, like how many pre-skills are they really missing, and B, if we put the remediation in with the actual content, could we get a better
Can we get them over the
end
hump?
result? So one concern I have is for the student who really does have a lot of gaps in their learning, is that they'll have so much work to complete, and then being able to, so keeping up with the remediation and with the algebra content to stay on pace to finish the course.
And Lori, I think you hit the nail on the target there with where my question was kind of going, and just being aware, okay?
Yes.
It's about awareness. I know of some groups, and not all groups have the luxury to be able to do this. And Trace, I'm not sure what your end case use case is here, but I know sometimes math labs are built in occasionally into a time frame of a day, or that maybe it's not meant for a year program, but a year and a half program, that type of situation. But it is being aware of time frames, because Lori, you're right. If you have a student that just struggles occasionally and has a little extra of the review built in, it's probably not a huge deal. But if you're talking about a student that always has every getting started folder released and always has a review folder getting released, it doesn't make it a bad thing. It's probably exactly what the student needs, but it does mean that we might need to build in a time understanding or not panic if someone isn't looking like they're finishing at a certain time, and look to see what flexibility we may have or can build in before we even start. So I think you hit the nail on the head there, but it is something just to think of along that line. Trey, how about you? What's your use case, and would you have that same concern? Have I lost you? You've muted yourself if you're talking.
Okay.
There you are.
Now?
There you
Sorry.
go. So much better.
I unmuted the phone. That really helped. Okay, so I was going to say we're trying to sort out if this will be a good fit for the two user groups that we have in mind. One is kind of what you described, a math lab. So we have a group that's pre-identified as struggling, and they are going to get a double dose where they have a teacher and a special ed teacher 2 periods a day, and they probably aren't back-to-back, but it's a double dose for those kids, and it's a group of 30, and they're trying to decide if they want to run with just the regular Algebra 1 course online and maybe pull in a few pre-algebra, like the last 2 units of a pre-algebra course. This isn't a blended environment with our teachers, but the online. So they could just drag and drop the previous 2 units and maybe run a pre-assessment and then open up the previous, you know, the last 2 pre-algebra units for those kids that they determined needed a little review before moving on. But all the kids in there should be, even though they struggle with the content, should be capable of taking an algebra course with the extra help. And they will be on a semester schedule, so I'm not sure what we're going to do if a kid because of so much remediation, only ends up halfway through the course by the end of the first semester.
Right, but you said that there was extra time built in, so that might address that issue.
Yeah, with 2 periods a day, I think it's fine, but also because it's our teacher, they could decide to issue a grade or to let it, you know, if they really want to just, you know, keep working with the learner and have them do a half a semester over the whole year, maybe that's the best thing for the kid. I'm not sure.
Right,
so,
and also with the extra time, that could also correspond to it. So good.
Yeah, exactly. And then we have another group that's just a little bit different that I think that they're struggling learners, but we don't know why. It might not be academic. It might be that they have academic skills, but they have other obstacles to being a good student, and so that might not be appropriate. And those ones, we might start them in this course. And if we really determine, like, hey, they really need pre-algebra, we might pull them from this and put them in a pre-algebra course. I don't know how we're going to give credit for it because our district doesn't really give credit for pre-algebra. But if they don't know the stuff and they can't move on, what are you supposed to do? Or conversely, if they really don't need any remediation, this was a question I have for you. If every time they move along, they don't have any folders for review, should they just stay in this course, or should we drop them and just put them in the Algebra 1 course? I mean, is it the same?
It would be, basically, this is a marriage of a lot of different things, of which one of them is a marriage of the algebra course. It wouldn't do them harm to stay here, because then as they move along, if something does cause the problem, so it may be if you find in first semester that they really never had anything released to them ever, then maybe in second semester you move them. I probably wouldn't move them in the middle of first semester, though. I'd let them finish out the first semester work here, and then if nothing ever got released, go put them in the regular algebra, 1 semester 2 kind of course. But I wouldn't move them once they start here because it won't do them any harm that way.
Yeah, but they could maybe just finish out the semester for more of a seamless user experience.
Exactly.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Okay. So now I'm going to, unless Michelle or Lori, you have any questions over the student's view, the last thing I'll show you is here for Marty where this is a later unit, so she hasn't taken this yet. You can see when a student first enters the unit, as long as they had an 80% or the teacher provided that override for 80% on the readiness assessment, that all the student sees at first is a checkup. And then as the unit progresses, they see one module of the unit at a time, and that's how it releases. So they really can't jump ahead so much. It really is about releasing modules in short gaps for them so that they get that review for each section or each module. So that's the student view. Questions, student view? We can always come back here at the end if anybody wants to take another look at it. Okay.
I do have a question, but I don't know if this is the right time to bring it up.
Go for it.
It's back to the readiness assessment. I know, at least I think I saw that it was a forced completion. So it's not like the peak library assessments where you're allowed to return to it wherever you left off.
I'm going to show you a setting, Lori, where although that's the default, I'm going to show you a setting where you can change that.
Okay.
So that if you're concerned the student's not going to finish 60 questions or the semester exam, that you can avoid that. Okay? It's one of the first things I'll show you actually when we move over here to the teacher view.
Okay, perfect. Great. I'll just listen away then. Thanks.
Okay. So we're going to log out there, and we'll see whether it liked me or not. See if it allowed my cheating to work. Maybe. I think I got away with cheating. Excellent. So I'm now here as the instructor. So I'm in the same course. And when I click on a unit, the difference is, as the teacher, as the instructor, I see everything. Nothing ever, it's not over time release. It is just a release that happens, you don't see the release, you see everything. So you see the real numbers, and then you see the real number review folder. So if you want to see what might possibly get released to a student, you can look here, and this is the folder that would follow. And so there are 3 possible review features that they could see after that real numbers review. Same thing if I come in here into the real and rational numbers module, you can see that there are actually a possibility of 2 getting ready folders that are released, and the getting ready folders are released based on how they do on these checkups. So the checkups are more the pre-algebra. The getting ready folders that they see in each of the modules are based on those, and then the reviews that you see here are based on the section quizzes. So reviews or section quizzes, getting started, are all associated with the checkups. But a teacher can come through and kind of at least pre-plan and see what items are there. So that's one thing. The second thing is, and Lori, do you mind if I give you mouse controls for a second? Kind of spice this up a little bit?
Yeah, sure, no problem. Great.
Okay, I'm going to give you the mouse control. And if you would, go over to the readiness assessment and click on the readiness assessment. And hover next to readiness assessment so that we get the drop-down arrow next to the, actually over in the unit itself, yep, right over there. And on the drop-down arrow, select where it says Edit Test Options. And I would like for you to scroll all the way down to the bottom, because the area, well, actually, let's do this in pieces. Scroll to the middle section where it says availability. So right below all this description, right there. Whoop, up just a little bit. A little higher. A little more. There we go. We're talking about the force complete setting you had noticed. So what I would suggest, if you're worried about not having enough time for students to finish this one item, if you left force complete on and a student walks away, what will happen these days is that assignment will get graded out. It will basically get submitted on behalf of the student. The student will take a 0 on every question they did not do. So what I'm going to suggest you do is uncheck that force complete if you're at all worried about the time frame, and then scroll down to the bottom. After you do that, there's a place where we can change one other setting. Because if all you do is change the force complete, what will happen is the students would be allowed to view all questions. They'd be able to, go look up answers, grab answers, come back and come back in, save all they want. But Lori, if you just drag and go to the bottom now. There we go. You were down. There we go. Right there where it says test presentation at the bottom, what you would want to do is, instead of all at once, you would want to check what's off to the right. Not so much the randomized, but you'd want to do the check off to the right, and I would suggest that you want to prohibit the backtracking. So what that means is a student will get the question, they'll see just one question at a time, and if you prohibit backtracking, they can't go back and change their answer. So, but what that would allow a student to do is they could do, 30 questions today, come back tomorrow, finish the last 30 questions, and they will not be able to go back. That concept of being able to cheat and go back to a question that they already saw because they looked up an answer wouldn't be there. So that would be my suggestion on both the readiness assessment and the semester exam. If you have any worries about time, that these are the setting changes. Now, we had 2 pilots last spring and both used this change and neither had a problem. The reason why this is not the default was kind of going back in the old days, in the older version of Blackboard here. This setting did cause a problem, but in the 2 pilots we ran last spring that were using this course, that was an issue for them. We did not have anybody say that there were any issues with this setting. So I would say it's at least worth a try using this setting. Let us know, specifically let me know if something happens by using this setting, because I'm trying to make a case that we could actually change the default to be this, because I think this would benefit a lot of students with these exams. And then you would just click the submit button and that would change the settings. So it would really be 2 steps. Just uncheck the force complete, but then scroll to the bottom so that you're saying 1 at a time and prohibit backtracking.
So on the ready, yeah, because of course when you have a constraint to your time period, that's what my concern is.
Yep.
But on the readiness assessment, is it different than other assessments where, in other words, that every answer, I mean, every question is in the same order for every student, and it's also only those original 60-plus questions every time?
Yeah, check out the readiness assessment itself. If you click on readiness assessment, if you hover, do the hover again.
Oh, sorry.
Only this time. And Trey, if you haven't quite left yet, I will send you the recording. Okay. I'll make sure she gets the recording too.
Okay.
But on this, click where it says edit test instead of edit test options. And you can always check this. But if you look here on this particular test, notice when I scroll down, and I'll just take the mouse for a quick second and scroll, you are actually seeing the questions on this readiness assessment. They truly are coming. They're all the same 60 questions. However, if we go into a unit just as comparison, let me go into a regular unit here. And on the unit exam, for example, if we do the same thing and go edit test, do you see here where instead of seeing the question immediately, you see where it says random block?
Yes.
That means this is coming from a test pool. So within the units, you will have test pools of questions. The readiness assessment itself, though, is just the straight 60 questions.
Okay, very good. And I know on other assessments you can pull in or take out questions if you want, you know, to bring in other objectives or whatever. But I'm assuming in this readiness one, maybe not, because it's prescribing certain stuff based on.
I would avoid in this course. In this course, I would avoid removing something.
Okay.
Now, you can always go add something. I would be careful about removing it outright or changing the standard that it's really associated with, because that will end up messing up your reports, the specialized reports we have at the end, because it's not going to recognize your alignment of what standard you may have brought in. So, you know, if you had an assignment you wanted the students to do, that would be fine, just as in any other course. But I would probably be a little bit more hesitant here about really changing and tweaking a lot of things here because of the relationship on the reports you're going to see.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes.
A little bit more straight out. But along those lines. Okay? So the readiness assessment is the 60, but the rest of the algebra course is like our other algebra course, which does have basically around 3 to 1 questions. So for every question, there are 3 possibilities. And if you wanted to go in and tweak one of those, we can do that. I mean, again, I probably wouldn't change it drastically. Oop, didn't mean to edit there. Ooh, want to go back. I can preview the questions, and just like with any of the other ones, like if there was just a slight change to the question you wanted to make, you can always click here and do edit, and then you can like readjust the question, but I would try to keep it within the same standard because it's going to get married up to the reports.
Right. Okay.
Okay?
Yes. That makes sense.
Okay. Perfect. So that's on that end. Lori, why don't you take us into the full grade center for a moment? Because
you knew where I wanted to go, didn't you?
I did. Because one of the things you're going to have to know straight off the bat is if you have a student like Norm, okay, that hopefully no one's getting a 0, but, you know, doesn't do well, but you still want them to actually be in this course, you need to override this readiness assessment grade to give them access. So just to the right there, we don't even have to go even that deep. If you just click on that 0 for me there and type 600 and just click off of it. Any place else. Yep, and click OK. Later on, we can go back as Norm, and you will see, and notice you get that little yellow caret up there in the corner. It means you typed an override, so if you're looking at this, you would know Norm really didn't get a 600. Okay, but you give him a 600, because a 600 would be 100%, and that will allow Norm to see the checkups and be able to then start working through the content. So basically 600 is the number to remember on that.
Okay, I have a question here. Does I know I overrode it, and I love the fact that it has the little yellow caret because that's awesome because you're going to want to know that if you've overridden it.
Yep.
But you see here how that box is still displaying that his attempt on 818 was a 0. Will that information always be available?
Yes. Yes. Okay. Yep. That never disappears. You placing a 600 there does not negate any of the reports and say he all of a sudden mastered things that he didn't master.
Right.
It just allows the rule to work that will release the checkups.
Okay. Very good.
On that. Okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Michelle, how are you doing?
Doing good.
Okay. Be honest now, and always speak up.
I am. I'm just soaking it all up here.
Okay. So along those lines. So the assessment, that readiness assessment is 600. So that's basically you provide that override grade to get them to go through.
Okay. Very good.
Also notice that at the top of that readiness assessment that there's the circle with the pink little slash through it.
Yes.
Now what technically that symbol means is that grade is hidden from the student.
Okay.
In our world, not only did we hide it from the student, we're also not counting it as a grade. I mean, that's not part of their average.
Right.
So you go down to Norm, even though we gave him a 600, there's no grade there. Okay?
Right.
You'll also notice, and I'm going to steal the mouse back just for a quick second here, you'll also notice that as I scroll through, when I hover here, the checkups also have that same symbol. And as I go through the rest of the course, that checkup, again, has that same symbol. The checkups, too, are not meant to be a grade. They are meant to basically test the students' pre-algebra skills on skills that will be needed to be successful in the algebra unit. And it's used to release those getting started folders, but it's not meant to be a grade. So these grades will not be visible to the student, and they are not meant to be included into the average.
Okay.
So that's why you see those symbols on those grade columns.
All right.
Okay?
Very good. Yes.
Okay. Those are the big, besides the reporting feature, those are the big things to take in from the teacher's aspect. One, you do have the ability to adjust the readiness assessment and the final exam, or really any exam, so that it releases one at a time, uncheck the force complete, and then say one at a time and prohibit backtracking. That would be the most educationally sound. 2, you have the ability to override to allow the student to move into, even if they didn't get that 80% on the readiness assessment, along those lines. And then 3 is the fact that on absolutely any unit, you as the instructor, even though the students don't see everything, you always get to see everything. So you don't have to go through and, fail everything to get things to release for you as the teacher.
Right, right.
Okay?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Michelle, would you like the mouse for a little bit?
Sure.
Okay. So, Lori, I'm going to take the mouse away from you. We're going to give the mouse.
Okay.
We're going to give the mouse to Michelle here. And Michelle, the reports I'm about ready to show you are actually reports that are specific to this course itself. Okay? And if you scroll down, and in the lower left-hand corner there in that control panel area, there's a place that says Course Tools. So if you could just click where it says Course Tools. Do we have 2 mics near each other?
Yeah, I'm trying. I can't find my microphone thing.
You can, if there's a little orange, you can open that. There we go. Okay, so perfect. So Michelle, here under Course Tools, one of the items you see down there is called Peak Pathways Reporting. And so just click there where it says Peak Pathways Reporting. And there are 5 things listed here, but we're really only, the bottom 2 really are